Mueller Report, Volume 2, Track 12, Section 2.2.B.9. Page 42. The President attempts to have K.T. McFarland create a witness statement denying that he directed Flynn's discussions with Kislyak. On February 22, 2017, Priebus and Bannon told McFarland that the President wanted her to resign as Deputy National Security Advisor, but they suggested to her that the administration could make her the ambassador to Singapore. The next day, the President asked Priebus to have McFarland draft an internal email that would confirm that the President did not direct Flynn to call the Russian ambassador about sanctions. Priebus said he told the President he would only direct McFarland to write such a letter if she were comfortable with it. Priebus called McFarland into his office to convey the President's request that she memorialize in writing that the President did not direct Flynn to talk to Kislyak. McFarland told Priebus she did not know whether the President had directed Flynn to talk to Kislyak about sanctions, and she declined to say yes or no to the request. Priebus understood that McFarland was not comfortable with the President's request, and he recommended that she talk to attorneys in the White House counsel's office. McFarland then reached out to Eisenberg. McFarland told him that she had been fired from her job as Deputy National Security Advisor and offered the ambassadorship in Singapore, but that the President and Priebus wanted a letter from her denying that the President directed Flynn to discuss sanctions with Kislyak. Eisenberg advised McFarland not to write the requested letter, as documented by McFarland in a contemporaneous memorandum for the record that she wrote because she was concerned by the President's request. Eisenberg thought the requested email and letter would be a bad idea from my side because the email would be awkward. Why would I be emailing Priebus to make a statement for the record? But it would also be a bad idea for the President because it looked as if my ambassadorial appointment was in some way a quid pro quo. Later that evening, Priebus stopped by McFarland's office and told her not to write the email and to forget he even mentioned it. Around the same time, the President asked Priebus to reach out to Flynn and let him know that the President still cared about him. Priebus called Flynn and said that he was checking in and that Flynn was an American hero. Priebus thought the President did not want Flynn saying bad things about him. On March 31, 2017, following news that Flynn had offered to testify before the FBI and congressional investigators in exchange for immunity, the President tweeted, "Mike Flynn should ask for immunity in that this is a witch hunt, excuse for big election loss, by media and Dems, of historic proportion." In late March or early April, the President asked McFarland to pass a message to Flynn telling him the President felt bad for him and that he should stay strong. Analysis. In analyzing the President's conduct related to the Flynn investigation, the following evidence is relevant to the elements of obstruction of justice. A. Obstructive act. According to Comey's account of his February 14, 2017 meeting in the Oval Office, the President told him, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. I hope you can let this go." In analyzing whether these statements constitute an obstructive act, a threshold question is whether Comey's account of the interaction is accurate, and, if so, whether the President's statements had the tendency to impede the administration of justice by shutting down an inquiry that could result in a grand jury investigation and a criminal charge. After Comey's account of the President's request to let Flynn go became public, the President publicly disputed several aspects of the story. The President told the New York Times that he did not shoo other people out of the room when he talked to Comey and that he did not remember having a one-on-one conversation with Comey. The President also publicly denied that he had asked Comey to let Flynn go or otherwise communicated that Comey should drop the investigation of Flynn. In private, the President denied aspects of Comey's account to White House advisers, but acknowledged to Priebus that he brought Flynn up in the meeting with Comey and stated that Flynn was a good guy. Despite those denials, substantial evidence corroborates Comey's account. First, Comey wrote a detailed memorandum of his encounter with the President on the same day it occurred. Comey also told senior FBI officials about the meeting with the President that day, and their recollections of what Comey told them at the time are consistent with Comey's 971 account. Second, Comey provided testimony about the president's request that he let Flynn go under oath in congressional proceedings and in interviews with federal investigators subject to penalties for lying under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. Comey's recollections of the encounter have remained consistent over time. Third, the objective, corroborated circumstances of how the one-on-one meeting came to occur support Comey's description of the event. Comey recalled that the president cleared the room to speak with Comey alone after a Homeland Security briefing in the Oval Office, that Kushner and Sessions lingered and had to be shooed out by the president, and that Priebus briefly opened the door during the meeting, prompting the president to wave him away. While the president has publicly denied those details, other administration officials who were present have confirmed Comey's account of how he ended up in a one-on-one meeting with the president, and the president acknowledged to Priebus and McGahn that he in fact spoke to Comey about Flynn in their one-on-one meeting. Fourth, the president's decision to clear the room and, in particular, to exclude the Attorney General from the meeting signals that the president wanted to be alone with Comey, which is consistent with the delivery of a message of the type that Comey recalls, rather than a more innocuous conversation that could have occurred in the presence of the Attorney General. Finally, Comey's reaction to the president's statements is consistent with the president having asked him to let Flynn go. Comey met with the FBI leadership team, which agreed to keep the president's statements closely held and not to inform the team working on the Flynn investigation so that they would not be influenced by the president's request. Comey also promptly met with the Attorney General to ask him not to be left alone with the president again, an account verified by Sessions, FBI Chief of Staff James Rebecki, and Jody Hunt, who was then the Attorney General's Chief of Staff. A second question is whether the president's statements, which were not phrased as a direct order to Comey, could impede or interfere with the FBI's investigation of Flynn. While the president said he hoped Comey could let Flynn go, rather than affirmatively directing him to do so, the circumstances of the conversation show that the president was asking Comey to close the FBI's investigation into Flynn. First, the president arranged the meeting with Comey so that they would be alone and purposely excluded the Attorney General, which suggests that the president meant to make a request to Comey that he did not want anyone else to hear. Second, because the president is the head of the executive branch, when he says that he hopes a subordinate will do something, it is reasonable to expect that the subordinate will do what the president wants. Indeed, the president repeated a version of "let this go" 3 times. And Comey testified that he understood the president's statements as a directive, which is corroborated by the way Comey reacted at the time. B. Nexus to a proceeding. To establish a nexus to a proceeding, it would be necessary to show that the president could reasonably foresee and actually contemplated that the investigation of Flynn was likely to lead to a grand jury investigation or prosecution. At the time of the president's one-on-one meeting with Comey, no grand jury subpoenas had been issued as part of the FBI's investigation into Flynn, but Flynn's lies to the FBI violated federal criminal law,
redacted phrase,
and resulted in Flynn's prosecution for violating 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. By the time the president spoke to Comey about Flynn, DOJ officials had informed McGahn, who informed the president, that Flynn's statements to senior White House officials about his contacts with Kislyak were not true and that Flynn had told the same version of events to the FBI. McGahn also informed the president that Flynn's conduct could violate 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. After the vice president and senior White House officials reviewed the underlying information about Flynn's calls on February 10, 2017, they believed that Flynn could not have forgotten his conversations with Kislyak and concluded that he had been lying. In addition, the president's instruction to the FBI director to let Flynn go suggests his awareness that Flynn could face criminal exposure for his conduct and was at risk of